Welcome to Inside Startup Investing, the only podcast where you can invest in every guest. On this episode, I will be speaking with Conor Cullinane, President and CEO of Pirouette Medical, one of Kingscrowd Capital's latest portfolio companies. Pirouette Medical is creating the next generation EpiPen that is a step change for patients in terms of creating a far smaller, lighter weight solution that is also way less intimidating and challenging to use. As someone with an EpiPen myself, the large size and rather violent stabbing motion have been long overdue for an upgrade. Enter Pirouette Medical. A few things that stood out to me while learning about Pirouette is that first, Conor and his team are certainly the right team to design this, with a mix of PhDs, engineers, and rocket scientists that have already spent several years developing a one-click technology that can take an EpiPen down from what looks like a sword to a small cylindrical device that can fit in your pocket and is administered with the click of a button. Second, Pirouette has already onboarded some amazing institutional investors and strategic advisors that are helping to prep for full FDA approval and go-to-market strategy. What I also love about Pirouette is that they aren't just tackling the EpiPen market, whether it's naloxone for drug overdoses or the fast-exploding GLP-1 category for weight loss. Pirouette devices can be applied to all of these categories and many more, which creates an astounding market opportunity. Lastly, something that I personally like about med devices like this one is that investing in healthcare comes with huge upside as one of the largest spend areas of our overall GDP. But investing in biotech comes with massive risk and extremely long clinical trial processes. But with med devices, they aren't actually developing the drug. They are simply creating a new way of administering it, which means the go-to-market and potential exit cycle is far quicker for investors with less downside risk. So with that, let's get on to the show and welcome Conor. So for those who don't know you, let's hop in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you came to found Pirouette Medical.
Absolutely. So my background really stemmed originally from the aerospace world. I grew up on a small grass strip in southern New Hampshire where I could see the planes flying in the pattern all day long throughout the entire summer, and really got a bug for aviation, and then that led to aerospace. But I always really also had a passion for healthcare and kind of growing up in a household with a lot of siblings and my mom being an engineer, continued down that path of engineering, and so started with aerospace engineering and then added biomedical engineering, and really continued to just follow that passion. And at every kind of turn, I would always ask myself, hey, is this going to be awesome? And if the answer was yes, I would follow that path, and ultimately ended up combining those passions into a PhD in medical engineering and medical physics, while also working in the aerospace industry, designing spacesuits, and then ultimately ended up starting Pirouette towards the tail end of my PhD program, both out of a seen clinical need for an easier way to inject medications, as well as a personal connection. One of my brothers, I'm one of 6 kids, 5 boys, 1 girl. One of my brothers actually carried an EpiPen when we were growing up, and so I got to see what it looked like up close and personal to have to carry a device like that with you wherever you go, and also feel the anxiety associated with potentially having to use that. And so really just thought about kind of a better way to do that. Went through some feasibility and ultimately decided, hey, this could help a lot of patients, and at that point launched the company.
That's really cool. Now, you talk about kind of, seeing the EpiPen in place and your brother kind of working with it. What did you see that made you go, I can do this better, I need to do this better?
At the stage where I was kind of observing my brother with that device, portability was kind of like the first thing that jumped out at me. Large, bulky devices are really difficult to take with you wherever you go. And, especially at that age as well, in pediatrics where, you're talking about a child who doesn't remember anything when they walk out the door, right? How are they going to remember to take that device with them? And literally anywhere they go at all times. So kind of the bulky nature was already going against that. And then the other piece was, when a reaction might start to occur, or an instance when an injection is needed, the usability and that process also driving a lot of anxiety and fear was also something that I saw. And then towards that tail end of the PhD program, I literally just happened to come across a couple of articles about two separate instances where a child was exposed to an allergen. One was a bee sting, one was a peanut allergy. Didn't receive a life-saving dose of epinephrine in time, and unfortunately passed away. And that's kind of when it clicked, for me, that portability, one, is huge to have that device there, but two, usability was ultimately the big problem here. And so, kind of had the initial thought of how do we make this starting from the very beginning in a way that it just works as a patient would expect it to. And that was the thought process for what ended up being our low profile device.
Now, for those who don't know, using an EpiPen, right, it involves a large swinging motion, a big needle, fear from a lot of people in utilizing the device. It is not nearly as simple as I think a lot of people think who haven't experienced it before.
Yeah.
So you set on the path of saying, all right, we need to simplify this and make it extremely easy to use. What does the design process look like, and what have you ultimately developed to make that really, really simple user experience?
Yeah, so from a design perspective, we really think a lot about human-centered design. And the very beginning of that is to set up our user needs. And that comes from talking to end users and patients. So in the early days of the company, we set out and performed close to 1,000 patient surveys. And that's where we really learned kind of these unique stories from patients and end users, really fortifying everything that we thought might be a problem, and really distilling that down into very distinct needs that population needs. And then we allow those needs to drive the actual outputs of the design. And we literally started with a blank whiteboard. We love using whiteboards in our development process. So as we went through the design of this technology, it was literally thinking about how do we address what the patient needs, not necessarily how do we iterate on a technology that already exists, which is really what we had seen happening in that space for a long period of time. There's a reason why these devices, by and large, look exactly like a syringe, right? They have that same form factor. It's been around forever. We took it from that brand new perspective and said, hey, we're coming from a totally different industry, but we have that user centricity in mind. Let's let that drive the design from a totally blank slate.
Now, obviously, when you're dealing in kind of the medical space, people want to know about the legitimacy of what you're doing. What does your team look like? Who are some of the key people behind designing these new medical devices that you've created?
Yeah, so we were, in terms of a founding team, very technical co-founding group. So everything from mechanical engineering to aeronautical engineering, biomedical engineering. But we also built out the team in order to bolster our capabilities so that we can achieve our main goal right now, which is regulatory approval of our first flagship products. So we have manufacturing engineers, process engineers, we have quality engineers, and as we think about kind of each of those steps, those are different functions that have to exist for the medical device development process to be successful within the realm of regulatory approval. The other thing that we look for is, how do we surround the core team outside the company with the right capability and the right knowledge as well. So, for example, we brought on regulatory consultants, especially in the early days, to make sure that we were moving in the right pathway from a strategy perspective. We also brought on a lot of capability in the surrounding the management team. So, for example, we participated in Y Combinator, the startup accelerator out on the West Coast, and so we have a fantastic advisor, Serbi Sarna, who is our partner at YC, who had previously built and sold a medical device and manufacturing company. One of our board members is Joe Nemmers, who had previously been executive vice president at Abbott Labs before he retired, and has extensive experience in product development, commercialization, and manufacturing, including the buildup of brand new manufacturing facilities. So we try to really be aggressive in terms of looking for areas that we can fill if there's a gap in any particular skill set or knowledge, so that we can avoid any pitfalls that we otherwise might fall into. So it's a really strong and dynamic team at Pirouette, which has been really useful in us being capital efficient and moving quickly.
Obviously, with biotech, it always involves tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to eventually get to market. It could take years and years and years of clinical trials to get to market. You're developing a medical device. For those who aren't as seasoned in kind of the medical space, talk to me about what the approval process looks like, how long, and frankly, how much do you think it'll take to get from where you are today to actually be able to go to market?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we think about our products, we are innovating on the device side, but we pair our device with a drug product. And for our first two flagship products, including the epinephrine device and naloxone for opioid overdose, those are generic drugs. So we basically build those into our supply chain, but it is combined with the product when it leaves the door. And so in the eyes of the FDA, they consider that what they call a combination product. And so it's not a 510K pathway. It's actually a new drug application. It's regulated by CDER at the FDA. But unlike traditional biotech, traditional drug development, there is no clinical trial. We don't have to prove the safety and efficacy of those drug products again, right? And so it's really based on the development of the device and can we achieve the route of administration and the dose accuracy and the actual performance metrics around the device. So it becomes what I kind of describe as more of a streamlined regulatory approval process through that NDA or new drug application pathway, which is really nice for us, especially with these flagship products. And then, we think a lot about kind of how we can use that to accelerate future drug product pairings as well.
And then in terms of kind of timeline and maybe even development costs to get to that place where you could actually begin to put this in market,
Yep.
Do you have a sense of what that looks like?
Yeah, right now we're targeting our first approval. We're aiming for 2026, which would get us to commercialization in 2027. And for each of these drug products, it kind of varies because we built it as a platform first, and then it's a drug product addition on top of that. But we sort of expect a gap of about 10 to 15 million in total from where we are today to regulatory approval, which, if you can compare that to big pharma who are developing combination products, I typically give a comparable of about 10 plus years and like 70 to 100 million dollars. And it's typically an iteration on something that they already have, where, ours is coming from brand new as well. And that's really the benefit of being a small dynamic startup with, very focused core capability.
And will you need, once you have approval, will you need buy-in from the drug companies, whether it's, for an epinephrine pen or if it's for naloxone or any of those? Will they need to buy in to use your device, or can you quite literally purchase the drugs from them and put them into your device?
Yeah, so for the generic drug products, we purchase the actual drug substance, which is basically the powder, as if it was any other component in our supply chain. And then through our supply chain, we're doing formulation, fill finish, and actual integration into the device. So there's no need for, a drug manufacturer to partner with us. But as we think about kind of the expansion moving forward, we're definitely excited about those opportunities where there's the ability to pair with a larger pharmaceutical company who has a number of drugs in their pipeline that they can see placing into our device for a competitive advantage and a better patient experience for their patients. So, I think as we continue to expand, there will be multiple ways in which we can really support patients through those relationships. But right now, based on targeting generics first, it's a pretty easy path forward.
Now that we kind of have an understanding of how you're going to get to market and the process behind that, let's talk about the actual device. What does it look like? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So our device is a little low-profile disc-shaped auto-injector, which is quite different than the syringe form factor that's existed for many, many years. And as I had mentioned previously, you'll often see, for example, pen-shaped auto-injectors mimicking that syringe shape. Obviously, we've gone a totally different route with our form factor, And that really goes back to what I had mentioned previously about user needs and the thought process of intuitive use. And so the statement I usually like to make is we wanted to make injections as easy as pushing a button. And what that looks like is removing the safety cover. Once you remove the safety cover, you actually apply the device to your injection site. I use the term apply like a Band-Aid because it actually has a medical grade adhesive to hold the device on location prior to performing an injection. And then all the patient has to do is simply activate the device by pushing down. At that point, the device performs the injection for you, and the patient simply lets go, where the device pops up, locks out, and becomes its own little sharps container with used labels appearing circumferentially around the device. So, as I mentioned, as simple as pushing a button was the goal, and I think we've been able to achieve that, and now it's really a matter of getting this into the hands of patients and getting it approved and getting it into the hands of patients.
Oftentimes, with drug companies, ultimately it's like the biotechs develop it. They spend, hundreds of millions of dollars doing that, and then, get bought out by the big pharma who then knows how to manufacture and sell on a mass scale. Is that kind of a similar dynamic in the medical device space, or do you see the opportunity to really remain independent and scale up this business?
Yeah, it can be in the medical device space. Typically, kind of the comparable exits that you look at are sort of post FDA approval buyout, or a downstream buyout after a few years on the market, or then even sort of the later stage IPO. I think for us, because we see this as a platform and not just like a better EpiPen or a better way to deliver naloxone, we really think about kind of the family of products that this can offer. We're pretty interested in the ability to have multiple exits of different types, whether it's a licensing deal or a new drug product pairing that we're manufacturing in-house. So we wanted to give ourselves the flexibility there, and we did that by not only developing the device, but also building out capability to manufacture and test that device as well. So if a drug product partner comes and says, we want to license it and we want to manufacture it, there's that opportunity. But if they come and they say, we've got this great drug, but we want you to manufacture it, we also have that capability. So it gives us a lot of flexibility.
To understand kind of the market size and scope of opportunity that's here, we talk about the epinephrine and naloxone. What are some of the other opportunities that exist, and how big are those?
Yeah, so the injectable drug market, the injectable medications in general, is about a $600 billion market today. And it's growing, and it's not going anywhere. And one of the biggest reasons it's growing is the introduction of the GLP-1s for obesity, for example, where I've even seen projections saying that particular segment alone could drive about 100 billion, right? So it's a very large market. It's a market with a significant need, and right now the patient population, has a poor experience with their delivery.
This is certainly a threat to traditional kind of EpiPens. This is not the smartest question here, but in terms of defensibility of your technology, preventing those folks from kind of the incumbents from doing something like this, and B, is there any way in which you think they could try and kind of block you out from getting to market, just again because it does seem like a fairly large threat, because it is a much improved experience for users?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we think about defensibility, we've spent a significant amount of time thinking about our patent portfolio. So we currently have 21 issued utility patents, which is a really strong portfolio, and that is going to continue to grow. And that's protecting, kind of the device, the form factor, as well as the internal mechanisms that we personally developed in order to achieve that. I think, honestly, our goal is patient advocacy and to really increase access to these types of life-saving injectables, as well as sort of chronic care injectables as well. And I would think that larger pharma would be less interested in blocking us and more interested in working with us, right? Because epinephrine is one example of a great drug product where a revolution in that patient experience is needed. But ultimately, this is a platform that's going to help with lots and lots of medications. And so, if I put myself in their shoes, I would say, well, this is really great for patients, and it would also be really great to spread that across more of our drug product offerings and work with them rather than try and stifle them.
It might be early to talk about this, but from an economic standpoint, do you have a sense of, it sounds like there's really two key ways of doing this. One, you develop, and manufacture with the drug in your device and you sell it directly, or two, someone like Abbott or whoever it may be actually licenses the device and then they do all of their own manufacturing, putting together and selling. Any example cases of licensing deals that have been done with medical device companies that kind of look like yours? And then on the other side of it, if you were to do it kind of directly, build your own device or manufacture it, put the drugs in and sell it on your own, again, what the economics kind of look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the most closely related comparable is kind of at the post-FDA approval stage or even prior to that, licensing deal between IntelliJect and Sanofi, which brought AviQ to market. Eventually, that was from about 2009 through 2013. And then, I would say in terms of like our pathway in a similar vein, we really think about kind of being open, but at the same time preparing to bring this product to market, this flagship product to market ourselves. And so, I think for us that drives the most value. And in terms of the economics there, we've always thought about a 1-2 punch, and that means a better device, but at an affordable price. And so as we think about kind of that affordable price, right, we want to be able to allow patients to obtain the device without having to choose between a life-saving medical device and groceries on the table for their kids. So for us, we haven't decided on what that final price will be, and I think our kind of final cost of goods will determine that. But our projections right now are, such that we can offer it at a lower price than existing offerings, which will be great for patients, and still have significant margin so that we can make money and reinvest that into growing the product pipeline, which then allows the economies of scale to drive even more significant price savings for the patient.
From my perspective, and I could be wrong on this, but it does feel like there are basically two gatekeepers to really growing this business, probably three, including regulatory. But is Big Pharma and all of these companies kind of buying into this new technology? But the way in which one major piece of them deciding to buy into this will be that it is a genuinely improved patient experience, and patients are demanding and wanting something like this. What has been the patient feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of, the piece that I was thinking about as you were asking that question is, we really think about driving this kind of from all key stakeholder perspectives. And one of the most significant kind of responses that we've seen is from the end user and or patient population. We ran another study recently with about 1,000 end users and patients, and saw a 93% intended adoption rate, which is pretty exciting. And that's just from folks who have seen the device basically on video, not had a chance to hold it yet. And what we've seen is once you put the device in individuals' hands and they get to use it, there's definitely an excitement there as well in terms of that experience in comparison to what they've been used to. And so our thought process there is, if you can get the adoption driven from the end user and from the prescriber, right, and from the payers because you have a lower price, then all of a sudden, you kind of become the designated or preferred injection device, and then that starts to drive more product pairings, and then will allow us to continue to grow that portfolio, which then kind of in turn continues to keep that snowball moving. So to have already seen that type of feedback from those stakeholders has been fantastic.
Hey, 18 to 24 months, what does success look like for you? I kind of already know, right? A big part of that is getting approval.
Right.
But for those of us who aren't in this world on a day-to-day basis, you show me the device, it looks like, it probably works at this point.
Right.
What is this or what does the approval process look like? Literally, what is going on? What are the things you're doing? Is it just, are you meeting with regulators and literally going through the device and breaking it all down? Like, just explain for us a little bit what that actually looks like, what the process, what goes into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. The device does work today. The actions that we're performing are basically test, right? And you think about the regulatory approval process oftentimes as a hurdle, but we really see it as a benefit, especially for the patients who we're trying to advocate for. Ultimately, it ensures the quality of the product that you're putting out on the market once you obtain that approval. And so there, as you kind of move down that path, there are certain milestones that you have to achieve, and there are certain standards that you have to meet. And so the process that we're undergoing right now is sort of the build and test associated with showing that we can meet those milestones. And then that feeds into building more and more devices and showing that at larger and larger sample sizes. But it's both on the drug and the device side. So device performance, as we had talked about before, but then also showing that the device is capable of maintaining long-term stability for the drug product. And I would say that's probably one of the largest time-sensitive components of, what takes so long to get regulatory approval is, once you're building essentially the to-be-marketed device in what would be called a registration batch, you actually have to put those devices on the shelf as if they were, going to be sitting at a local pharmacy or on the shelf at home. And you have to ensure, based on periodic testing, that the drug stability is still working and that device reliability is still there through those time points. And so obviously needing specific time points means it has to be there for a certain period. And that usually is a driver in the timeline.
If you like what you heard on the show today, you can check out Pirouette Medical's offering page on WeFunder that currently runs until July 24th, 2024. And please like, subscribe, and share our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so more listeners like you can find us. Thanks for listening.